Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new to my channel, hello, my name is Gabby and welcome. And if you are new to my channel, I cover less talked about vintage cases. So if that's something you might be interested in, maybe hit that subscribe button down below and quite possibly turn on the post notifications so you can be notified every time that I upload. Today I'm covering a case all the way up in Alaska. It's been a while since I've covered a case from Alaska, so I'm excited to get into it. But before I get into the video, I have to say that today's video is sponsored, and it is sponsored by Magellan TV. Magellan TV is a video streaming service that is dedicated to bringing its viewers the highest quality documentaries. If you are interested in expanding your knowledge about topics you're passionate about, Magellan TV is for you. Right now, Magellan TV has over 2,000 documentaries acquired by some of the best filmmakers and documentary networks from all around the world. They also add new programs every single week, so you'll never run out of things to watch. Magellan TV can be watched anytime and anywhere and is compatible with Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Google Play, iOS, and there are no ads, so you can enjoy your programs with no interruptions. Their crime and mystery section is absolutely incredible, including documentaries and docuseries about tons of cases from all around the world that even I had never heard of before. Magellan TV is a longtime sponsor of mine. I always love doing videos in collaboration with them. They are an absolutely incredible documentary streaming service. Now, my recommendation for today's video to watch on their service, if you do want to sign up for their service, is a documentary called A Question of Innocence. A Question of Innocence is a documentary released in 2014 that explores the death penalty in the United States. It examines the case of death row inmate Tommy Zeigler, who had been at the time on death row for 38 years. It really helps shine light on the faults in the American justice system, and it really makes you think about how some people on death row didn't get a fair trial and are actually innocent. It's a great documentary. If you want to try out Magellan yourself, you can go to try.magellantv.com/gabulosis, or you can click the link in the description of my video, and if you click that link or go to that URL, you can get 1 month free of their service. Keep that in mind. So with all that being said, let's get into the case. This is the solved murder of Shelley Connolly. Shelley Connolly was a 16-year-old girl whose mother described her as a typical teenager. She was loud and spunky, filled with energy and a lot of motivation. She was born and raised in Alaska and took advantage of the gorgeous nature around her, spending a lot of time fishing and camping with her family, a family she was extremely close to, especially her younger brother, who absolutely adored her. She was very petite, and her mother says she was the type of girl who just didn't realize how truly pretty she was. In the beginning of the year 1978, Shelley had recently dropped out of Service High School in Anchorage, Alaska, the city she lived in. Even though she had just dropped out, she was eager to start her life and had planned on starting cosmetology school very soon to become a hairdresser. Although young, she was engaged to a man in the military who was a few years older than her and stationed at Fort Richardson. During this time in Anchorage, Alaska, there was fresh oil flowing through the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and this created a lot of new jobs. There was a lot of young men making decent money in the area doing pipe work, and a lot of these young men would work during the day, and then after work, they would go to the local bars. Six-packing was very popular at the time, and that was basically where they would buy a 6-pack of beer, chug it really quickly, and just enjoy their night. Shelley was very young at the time. She was 16 years old. She was below the legal drinking age, but this town she lived in, everyone kind of knew each other, and a lot of teenagers were in fact let into the local bars. She went out, she was trying to have a good time, and unfortunately she met the wrong people. And apparently she's not the only young woman that this happened to, because in the year of 1978, there were 7 other young women who were murdered in this area. Shelley left her home that evening wearing a shirt that her mother said she didn't really approve of. The night was a chilly one, and the area was covered in a thick fog, so Shelley also put on a ski jacket her family had recently gifted her that past Christmas. She was all dolled up and ready for what she thought was going to be a fun evening of bar hopping. Based on reports, sometime during the evening, Shelley was seen leaving a bar called Chilkoot Charlie's, a bar that is actually still open in today's time. She was seen leaving this bar, though, with 3 young men. 2 of these eyewitness accounts came from her stepsister and her stepsister's boyfriend. The bouncer said she was a regular at the bar and her nickname there was Snow. Then later on, Shelley was seen at Leroy's, a diner that is open 24 hours. The exact time she left Leroy's diner is uncertain. The next morning on Saturday, January 7th, 1978, her body was found. The lifeless body of Shelley Connolly was found by 2 female hitchhikers 10 miles south of Pottermarsh along Seaward Highway near milepost 109. She didn't have the ski jacket on or any shoes, just her shirt and a pair of jeans. It was 15 degrees outside with a light layer of snow on the ground. They threw her out of the car alive, her mother said. Her hand got stuck in the door. They were driving with her. She was still alive, and once they realized they were dragging something, they stopped and opened the door and threw her over the side. She rolled down near the train tracks. She tried to crawl up. You could see in the snow where she tried. She's probably thinking, "Mom, where are you?" That's sort of the time that I got choked up, because a mother's always supposed to be there to protect her children. Whoever was responsible had beaten her, sexually assaulted her, and tossed her out of the vehicle, not realizing that her hand was stuck in the door and they had dragged her a distance and then opened the door, let her go, and she basically tumbled down the embankment. Her ultimate cause of death was internal bleeding and hypothermia, so basically exposure to the elements around her. She had a lacerated liver that was caused by blunt force impact. Broken fingernails and debris under those fingernails proved that she tried her hardest to climb out from the embankment. If she hadn't been dragged by the vehicle, she may have had enough energy to climb out of the embankment and get help. If she hadn't been dragged by the vehicle, chances are she could still be alive in today's time to tell the story. She was very close to survival. Her family was completely broken and devastated, but they held hope that the case would be solved. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, months to years, and years to decades. Every spring, Shelley's mother, Judy Connolly, would check with troopers to see where the case was and if there were any updates or promising leads. In 1993, 15 years after the murder, there was a new lead that police were following. They identified 4 suspects that were potentially linked to the crime by forensic evidence, and troopers traveled out of the state to interview the suspects and collect DNA evidence. But the DNA cleared those suspects completely of having any involvement in Shelley's murder. Again, the case hit a dead end after what was considered the biggest break the case had had in over a decade. Judy and her other daughter Valerie started brainstorming and trying to think of other ways to help Shelley's case. They reached out to the television show Unsolved Mysteries, but there were no takers there. They even reached out to a psychic, but that did not help at all. They were running out of options, but refused to give up, and in the year 2011, a $20,000 reward was offered in the case for any information that led to an arrest. In 2003, DNA from under Shelley's fingernails was entered into the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, to find a potential match, but none was found at the time. Then, in May of 2018, they submitted that same DNA for a new type of DNA testing called genetic genealogy. Genetic genealogy testing is when they enter DNA into a database to find possible matches for the DNA, also including other family members of who the DNA matches. Then after that, they are able to narrow down the search through public databases. The DNA was first connected to a woman in Florida who seemed to be a first cousin of the culprit. So they created a family tree all the way back to an ancestor named John J. McQuaid, who was born in Ireland in 1858. They had to make a connection to Alaska though. Then they found a John C. McQuaid, who was born in 1913 and was stationed in Alaska during World War II, and who went on to marry a woman in 1943 and have 9 children. 3 of those children were boys. Those 3 boys would have all been young adults at the time of Shelley's murder. They narrowed down the search even more by going through the public database to determine that one of the brothers was in Alaska at the time of Shelley's murder. They knew this because the man had checked in with his parole officer in the area only 4 days before the murder. In June of that year, they managed to collect 2 cigarette butts that were tossed out by the man, and they compared the DNA on the cigarette butts to the DNA that they had on file that came from underneath Shelley's fingernails. Coincidentally, the man connected to the DNA fit a perfect physical description of one of the men that Shelley was seen leaving Chilkoot Charlie's with the night that she was murdered. DNA found under Shelley's fingernails matched the DNA of a 62-year-old man named Donald F. McQuaid. Donald McQuaid was called on the phone a week before his arrest, and when they asked him about his connection to the 1978 murder of a 16-year-old female named Shelley Connolly, he denied any involvement, of course, claiming he did not know her, spent no time with her at any time, and did not claim her life. 2 days later, on August 29th, police questioned him in person at the Gresham Police Department in Oregon, where McQuaid lived. At this time, McQuaid kind of changed his story, and instead of saying he definitely never saw Shelley in his entire life, he went to saying that he may have possibly had sexual intercourse with her because he didn't really know, because he couldn't remember all of the people that he has had sexual intercourse with in his entire life, but he said it is a possibility. During the same day that he said that, police recorded a phone call between McQuaid and an old friend of his who lived in Alaska. During this phone call, he said he did not recall having any sexual intercourse with Shelley at any time. He also told this friend that if police actually had any DNA evidence against him, that they would arrest him, and claimed he had no idea how his DNA would get under her fingernails. Well, on August 30th of 2019, they arrested him for the murder of Shelley Connolly. Randy McFerrin, an Alaska State Trooper cold case investigator, said, "Investigators have spent years analyzing this case looking for a viable lead. I have an overwhelming feeling of satisfaction that all that work has paid off. More than anything, I am relieved to be able to provide Shelley's friends and family a sense of justice and the knowledge that Shelley was more than a name on an unsolved homicide sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere. Every single victim matters to us." Not only is DPS dedicated to giving each case the attention it deserves, we are committed to holding perpetrators of violent and senseless crimes accountable and always supporting victims and their families, said Amanda Price, Commissioner of Public Safety. "No matter how much time passes, we do not give up on providing justice for victims and their loved ones." Amanda Price said that the loss of Shelley was felt throughout the department all of those years, but it never did the work to seize in finding out who hurt her. Shelley's mother said that she is overjoyed by the resolution in the case, but that it is unfortunate that it took so long. But she said that she is thankful for the improvements in technology that helped solve her daughter's case and will help solve many other unsolved murders. Unfortunately, police have never been able to determine who the other 2 men were who were with Donald McQuaid that night with Shelley, and it's unlikely McQuaid will come forward with that information because he continues to claim he is innocent, and so does his brother. His brother said that he feels for Shelley's mother, but he feels they made a wrongful arrest in the case. Overall, though, evidence is evidence, and that's all I have to say. One thing that I really have to mention, which is a little ironic, is that only 3 weeks after Shelley's murder, McQuaid went to his parole officer and told him that he was moving quite possibly, with his sister who lived in Soldotna, Alaska. After that, he moved around quite a bit. He left Alaska in the 1980s, and then 10 years later, he moved back to Alaska, and then he moved to Oregon in the early 2000s until he was arrested. So that is the case of Shelley Connolly, and there's a few reasons that I wanted to bring this case up on my channel in general. And one of the main ones is because it really backs up and kind of highlights the idea of genetic genealogy. With the improvements in genetic genealogy, we are solving so many cases out there, from finding out the identities of Jane and John Does to finding out who certain serial killers were, such as the Golden State Killer. This case was so fascinating to me because they were able to arrest the person responsible, even though it was over 4 decades later, because they had traced back his ancestry to the 1800s, and they basically mapped out his entire family tree. And I've said this in many of my videos before, but if you do have a missing loved one out there that you are directly related to when it comes to DNA, they're not just like a cousin that you call a cousin and they're not actually related to you, definitely enter your DNA into CODIS, the DNA Doe network, because you never know when a Jane or John Doe could be found and they could trace back to you and find out the identity of this victim. It is a heartbreaking thing to think about, but of course closure is the ultimate goal when it comes to these cases. Of course, like with all my videos, thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to watch today's video and to hear about Shelley's story. If there's any cases that you would like me to cover, definitely post those down below in the comments. And this video, like I said at the beginning of this video, is sponsored by Magellan TV, so definitely go check them out. That'll be linked in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.